Hey, delighted to have you on the first year freelancing channel. So let's talk about the client onboarding process. This is so important in my view. Now, it depends slightly on how you work with clients. If you're a project-based freelancer, so maybe you build websites on a one-off basis for clients, you could be on a retainer model, one of my favorite freelance models, where let's say you're a social media marketer and you have a retained client that you work with on a monthly basis, for example. But for most of these cases, an onboarding process is critical. So, what do you want to include in your client onboarding process? Well, there's a few things. I think the first thing is you want to set out how you operate, how you work as a freelancer from the start. And actually, this begins prior to agreeing to work together, to be honest, in your sales process or your conversations with the prospect. Because what you don't want to do is have any ambiguity, particularly as a freelancer. Often one of the most important things to us is our freedom and our ability to work when and where and how we want to do so. So you don't want to have an expectation where they think you should be going into their office or working certain hours. So you want to set out that structure as part of the onboarding process very clearly at the start. One thing I would add is often clients just want to know these things because they might be new to working with a freelancer, or they're certainly new to working with you, and they just want to know how it works. And often they're like, okay, that's great, but if you don't explain these things, they may build up their own expectations in their mind of what they think should be happening. And they're like, well, why didn't you respond to me immediately? Or, why couldn't you answer my call? But if you explain, obviously, at the start, you're a freelancer and you have multiple clients and, they'll prioritize their work and meet deadlines and all that sort of thing. That's really important, the process of how you work. The next thing, obviously, which is really key, is things like logins, access requirements, assets that you need to do your job. Because I've seen so many projects fall foul of these things. Everything goes well, a great sale, a good fee, you agree the work with the client, everyone's excited to get started. And because they're so busy or it's a bit of a messy process, you never get what you need and it really slows the project down. It gets into the weeds, starts to drag on, other things become a priority, and before you know it, it becomes a real mess. So very clearly from the outset, have a process for getting what you need. Do you need images? Do you need video assets? Do you need login access to their website? Do you need their social media access requirements? Those type of things, that means you can do your job. Now, whatever they are, you want to build up a template. So build up a document, maybe even like a sort of step survey thing. You can just send them the link, really simple, straightforward, and they can just go ahead and complete it. You don't want to be having back and forth on email or having to ring them up and tell them. Create something very simple and send that to the client as part of the onboarding process. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is set out the timelines for the actions that you're going to be taking as well. So it comes back a little bit to the expectations of what you're going to be doing. So, for example, if you're implementing a marketing strategy, you might say, okay, well, the first month is building out the strategy. Month 2 is launching campaign 1. And month 3, we do a review of activity, identify what's going well, and then launch campaign 2. So that's just an example if you were a marketer, for instance. But, depending on what you do. But it's really important to set that out at the start on your onboarding process. It comes back to the clarity for the client and yourself. Everyone knows where they stand. Everyone knows what's going to be happening. You can work to those deadlines. And as a freelancer, you can work whenever you want, as long as you hit the deadline, which is part of the beauty of freelancing, of course. The client understands that, and then they get what they're expecting on time. And then you have maybe review calls or reporting calls as scheduled. So tied into that, if you're going to have those type of reporting calls or monthly client calls or whatever, get them booked in a calendar at a time that suits both yourself and the client, and put them on recurring meeting invites. Not a massive fan of recurring meetings, but I think for new clients it is important, and there is value in having some reporting activity in the early stages. Again, you can transition out of that as you build up trust and credibility over time. But get those things locked in as well. So there's just some ideas, and then maybe depending on your specific service and niche, some other areas that you need to add to your onboarding process. But too often, particularly with new freelancers, I've seen they have no onboarding process. So they kind of like just muddle their way through every time with a new client, and they're half repeating some of the things they need to do. But, let's just for a moment, just imagine you don't have any of these things in place. So the client doesn't know when you're going to be doing stuff. There's no deadlines. There's no the calendar invites for calls. So you're trying to back and forth on email ad hoc. Can you talk here? Can you talk here? I'll ring you now. Oh, you didn't answer. What's going on? You don't have the access you need. You don't have the assets. So, even talking about that stressing me out, right? It's just very frustrating and very stressful for everybody and doesn't get the work done. So a clear onboarding process that you have in place from the start, you share with the clients, is absolutely massive to getting your client relationship off to a good start for all parties. And this is how you build long-term client relationships by putting these things in place at the start. Now, finally, you're going to want to, look at this as a dynamic document or a dynamic template, however you want to call it, because over time you will improve and optimize your onboarding process. So maybe you'll get some feedback from some clients to say, oh, that was a little bit too difficult for me, or perhaps I could have, you could have helped me a bit more here, or whatever. So as you're learning, you should be constantly reviewing and optimizing your onboarding process till you get something that's really slick, works for your business, your operation, and importantly, your clients as well. Brilliant. So as always, if you have any comments, feel free to pop them below, and like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks very much.